Hi, this is Kim Perillo from SMART. Welcome to part 2 of Smart Learning Suite Google app for distance learning. Let's go ahead and just dive right in. So like I mentioned before, we're using the Smart Learning Suite online Google app for G Suite users to utilize creating lessons for online learning. And actually, it could be used for in-person learning as well. Now, in part 1, you saw the student-paced mode. Now, in part 2, we're going to look at how you're going to use Smart Learning Suite online to deliver live teacher-facilitated lessons. So that means the teacher is going to be in control of the pacing, and the purpose will be for synchronous learning. So whether the students are face-to-face in the classroom, or if the students are watching a lesson maybe through a Zoom call or a Google Meet or something similar to that. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go back over to my landmarks lesson. So you saw that in part 1, and I'm going to go back into editing mode. So sorry, let's open up the right one. So I'm going to open up my landmarks lesson. I'm back in Google Drive. I'm going to right click on the lesson that I want to edit and open with Smart Learning Suite. And then I will be back in editing mode here shortly. So I'll go to the hamburger menu in the upper left-hand corner, and I'm going to click on Edit Lesson. So remember, the purpose is now I'm going to add content in order for it to be delivered by the teacher in teacher-paced mode for synchronous learning. So you already saw some of the items that we added to the lesson, including some of the game-based learning activities, YouTube, that sort of thing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to page 8. And so what I'm wanting the students to do with page 8 is I want to convert this to a collaborative workspace. So that was one we didn't use in part 1. So now we're going to use it now for synchronous learning. So I'm going to click on collaborative workspace. And what that's going to allow for me to do when I deliver the lesson, it's going to allow the teacher to break the students in the lesson into groups. Okay. So I'll go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to go and let's look at page 9. We've got a discussion question here. I'm going to click on the little plus symbol. Remember, that takes you to the Smart Learning Suite app, online app. And that's where I can add various other things here. So in this case, I'm actually going to add a new page. So we haven't looked at that yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit these text boxes here, and I'm going to say, why do you think landmarks are important? So based on the content that we've already gone through, the students should be able to answer that question. And I'm going to add some directions here. Please use the text tool to answer, and you could provide as much directions as you need to. And don't forget to convert this to an individual handout activity. That would allow for the students to have access to those tools that I mentioned in part 1, where they can actually answer that question. And then I'm going to dive down to I'm actually not going to use this particular page, so I'm going to delete that page. So let's go down to the plus symbol one more time, and this is where you can add a either shouted out activity where you are collecting answers from your students. You can add a formative assessment activity where you are asking up to 5 different question types in order to formally assess your students. Or what I think I'm going to do is look at these ready-made activities, these questioning and reflection activities. That does still utilize both those activities. It utilizes shouted out, it utilizes response. But what I like about these ready-made templates here is it really supports the social emotional learning of your students. And I think that's really important, especially in a time of distance learning. So maybe I'll say, how do you feel about the topic? Or maybe you could say, share 3 things that you've learned today. You could definitely use these as a handout activity. Or maybe 3 facts, 2 questions, and 1 opinion. So let's go ahead and do that one. So that is a shout it out activity. Okay, so now I am done editing the activity or the lesson. And I already have myself, if you remember from part one, I already have myself in as a student. But in order for me to break my students down into groups, I need to add one more student, right? So I'm going to go and yet to another incognito window, and I'm going to go to Hello Smart. Remember, this is how your students get here, hellosmart.com. Typically, your students would log in with their Google or Microsoft credentials. And let's see here. Let's make sure that we're in a couple times. Yep, so it doesn't look like I am. So let's go, I'm gonna do it one more time with a different Chrome browser, because sometimes that's all you need to do is just try a different browser. So I'm going to do Hello Smart. I want to be a different student this time. So I'm going to go to hellosmart.com. Again, I'm going to join as a guest. Typically, your students wouldn't need to do that. Let's go here. Let's leave class. Oh, nope, that's right. So student A, let's just say my name is, I'll just use one of my daughter's names. So my daughter's name is Sydney. So I'm gonna do join as a guest. All right, so I think we're in. Okay, perfect. So as the teacher, I'm gonna go ahead, you can see right here that I've got Kim and Sydney in, perfect. Okay, so I'm gonna go down to those pages that we just added. So I'm gonna go down to page 8 and we're gonna see that collaborative workspace. So I'm gonna click on Set Up. And this is where I was talking that you can divide your students into teams or groups. So you could put everyone on the same team, which might be a little confusing if you have a lot of students, but I'm gonna break it into 2 teams or 2 groups so you can see how that works. Now, obviously, if I have more students in my class, that you'll see more students' names here. But what you can do is just move students around. So if you want to, if you don't like the way the students fell out, you could certainly change that. So I'm going to go ahead and start the workspace. And this is where, this is kind of, think of this as this teacher dashboard. This is where I can check the work of each team. So I need to go to team 2 here. This is team 2's page, and maybe I'm going to use, I don't know, a blue pen, or let's do a green pen. So I'm going to circle the Washington Monument. Perfect. And then now I'm going to go to my other one, and I'm going my other student page, and I'm going to maybe use a red pen, and let's circle the Capitol building and cross that off the list. Okay, so perfect. So now as a teacher, I can identify, I can see, I could go into Kim's group and I can see what she did. And if I have multiple people working on this page, I can click on the content, and then I could go to the arrow and I can see who actually added that content. So in this case, it's Kim. Same thing over here with the other student. So again, if I want to see who did that, I'm going to go back to the basically the home screen here, and I'm going to click on Sydney's team, and I'm going to click on the green here, and I'm going to click on that arrow and see it says added by Sydney. So it's really a great way as a teacher to monitor what each group is doing. And of course, remember, the teacher is always editor of every single page, no matter what. Okay, so remember also, we are in teacher lesson pacing. Okay, that's perfect. Okay, so we'll scroll down to page 9. And again, when I move the page for this, for me, it also moves for the student. So you can see that here real quick. I'm gonna pull up a student window. You can see that it has moved. And then if the teacher needs to make a mark, maybe the teacher is in the classroom and they're walking around, they can actually, maybe they have this pulled up on their iPad or something. They can point something out if they want to with some inking tools. And then you'll notice it automatically shows up on the student's device as well. So that's another little fun little feature there. Okay, and then finally, last 2 examples, we'll go down to page 10. And for page 10, remember, the student has to hit start, and then they will be able to complete that task. So this is a task, why do you think landmarks are important? So I would click on the text tool and I would answer with my content right there, and I could, you know, enlarge that if I need to. I can double click in the text box and edit that if I need to. Then again, the student can mark done. So you saw that in part 1, so we won't go over that again, but which is really nice. And then finally, last page here, I'm going to start the Shoutout Out activity for my students. And this is where they have the opportunity to submit their answers for 3 facts that they've learned in this lesson, 2 questions that they may still have, and 1 opinion. So as this the student, this is what I see. So maybe I see, you know, the Eiffel Tower, is in Paris. Okay, so that's, I got to figure out what category is that going to go into. So I think that will fall into the 3 facts category. So I'm going to send my response. And then from the teacher's menu, or the teacher's point of view, you can see that there's the answer right there. And then here's, if I click on that, it'll enlarge it. I can always move it around if I need to, but you'll notice that if I click on the settings here, I've got my students in here. Each student is assigned a shape to recognize them or identify them. Even if I turn display names off and there are no names tied to their answer, I can still figure out who answered what, which is really nice. So that is essentially how you would use, or some of the examples of what you would use for synchronous learning, and you're using the teacher paced feature of Smart Learning Suite Online. Remember, all of my changes get saved back into my Google Drive, and I can assign that lesson out to my students through Google Classroom if that's easiest. Otherwise, you can do link sharing as well. So thank you so much for your time and attention, and we'll see you next time.